All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful tool for talking about one of the toughest topics there is, racism. It was created by psychologist Dr. Shungu Hilda Magadza, and honestly, it's designed to completely change how we have these conversations.
Author Lovie Ajayi really hits the nail on the head here. We can't just wish it away. Ignoring the problem, pretending it doesn't exist, that just doesn't work. And for a lot of us, the conversation isn't going away anyway.
Instead, it just hits a wall. And I'm sure you've been there. A discussion about race gets started, you can feel the tension in the room build, and then nothing. It just dies. It's frustrating, it's unproductive, and sometimes it can feel like it's done real damage to a relationship.
But here's a thought. What if we've been coming at this from the wrong angle? What if the issue isn't the topic itself, but the way we're all trying to talk about it? Posing that question, well, it opens up a whole new way of thinking.
So, first things first, let's unpack why these conversations stall off so quickly. The problem really comes down to this kind of binary, all or nothing thinking that just slams the door on any real dialogue.
So often, it boils down to this one simple defensive line. The second the word racist enters the chat, the walls go up. The conversation becomes polarized, and any chance to actually learn something or find common ground is just gone.
And this, right here, is the heart of the matter. On one hand, you've got this binary thinking. You're either a racist or you're not a racist. It's like a light switch, on or off. But on the other hand, you have spectrum thinking. This sees a whole range of behaviors, a nuanced scale of biases and beliefs. It's not a switch, it's more like a dimmer, a slider.
And that whole idea of a slider, that's exactly where this new framework comes into play. So let's take a look at how thinking in terms of a spectrum can help us build a much better model for these conversations.
So here it is, the Prejudice Racism Spectrum. Dr. Magadza created it for one huge reason, to get past that defensive wall. The whole point is to map out specific behaviors, not to slap labels on people. It lets us pinpoint specific actions and talk about their impact without trying to cram anyone into a simple box.
So how does this actually work? Well, think of it as a scale. It's got a negative side that maps out problematic behaviors, and it's got a positive side that shows a path toward allyship. Let's break down what that actually looks like.
Now, what's so helpful here is that this gives us a vocabulary. We can go from just having a vague feeling that something is wrong to being able to name a specific action. Things like undermining a coworker or stereotyping students. That might fall around a -1 or -2. As you move down the scale, you get to things like gaslighting or more severe microaggressions, maybe around a -3 or 4, with the most overt, extreme forms of racism way down at the end.
But here's the key. This isn't just about calling out problems. It's a map for growth. The positive side shows a really clear path forward. It kicks off with just becoming aware of your own biases. That's in the +1, +2 range. From there, it moves into actively trying to understand and really listen to other people's lived experiences. And finally, it pushes towards genuine, proactive allyship and anti-racist action. It's basically a guide for how to do better.
Okay, I know this might all sound a bit theoretical, but this tool was absolutely designed for the real world. Let's look at an actual case study from a supervision session where it was used to make sense of a really painful and complicated situation at a school.
And this quote, wow, it just captures that feeling perfectly, doesn't it? This was a professional who felt like every time they tried to advocate for their students, they were just shot down. It left them feeling completely deflated, and as they said, it felt like it had just ruined their professional relationships. The whole situation was messy and just emotionally draining.
So, they used the spectrum, and this is where you can see its power. Those vague, heavy feelings were suddenly mapped to concrete points on this scale. Feeling constantly ignored and not valued by leadership, that's undermining, a -2. Other staff members stereotyping black male students and writing them off as just having behavior problems, that's profiling, also a -2. And all those constant, subtle, racially charged comments, those are microaggressions, landing somewhere around a -4. All of a sudden, the confusing mess had a structure. And once those behaviors were laid out clearly, a path forward just appeared. The problem wasn't that the leadership team were bad people. It was that they were operating on the negative side of this spectrum and probably didn't even realize it. So the solution wasn't to accuse them, it was to educate them. The first step became proposing training for the management team, using the spectrum itself as the main teaching tool.
That whole case study really reveals the deep philosophy behind this tool. It's about making a fundamental shift, moving away from blame and judgment, and moving towards constructive, actual change.
Let's be crystal clear about this. The goal is not to figure out who gets the racist label. The entire point is to lower those defensive shields we talked about so that a real, honest conversation can finally start.
Dr. Magadza uses this incredible metaphor. She talks about our caves of privilege. These are the realities we all build for ourselves that can sometimes make us completely blind to what other people are experiencing. This tool helps us start to deconstruct that cave, first by acknowledging our own biases, and then by truly listening to the lived experiences of others.
And you know, leadership facilitator Nina Simons just nails it with this quote. When we make that shift from a binary choice to a spectrum, we create space. Space for empathy, space for curiosity, and maybe most importantly, space to learn. Okay, so what does this all mean for us? What's the big takeaway here? How can we actually start to apply this kind of thinking in our own lives?
Let's lock in the key points. First, remember racism is a spectrum of behaviors, not a simple on or off switch. Second, this model is a tool for dialogue, not a weapon for judgment. Third, it gives us a way to identify specific behaviors, both in ourselves and in the places we work. And finally, the ultimate goal of all of this is self-reflection, learning, and driving real, meaningful change.
And that brings us to the final question, the one to take with you. This isn't about passing a test or getting a perfect score. The spectrum is dynamic, and we all move around on it. This question is just a prompt for a little bit of reflection, because the goal isn't judgment, it's growth. Where do you see yourself on the spectrum today?